Get this distributed. Thank you very much. You got this.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the MPO board meeting. It is February the 28th, the last day of February of 22. It's a little past 9:30. We were having a little bit of technical issues. I'll go ahead and ask Mr. Hutchinson to do a roll call in order to confirm a quorum, please.
Certainly, and I know that our clerk, Nanette, can confirm a quorum, but I'll just go down the table, if that's all right. And we'll start with Councilmember Bill Sanders.
Here.
Commissioner Misty Servia.
Here.
Commissioner Liz Alpert.
Here.
And Vice Mayor Mike Haycock.
Here.
Mayor Judy Titsworth.
Here.
Vice Mayor Ron Cutzinger.
Here.
And Commissioner Christian Ziegler.
Here.
And Mayor Pete Emmerich.
Here.
And Mayor Gene Brown.
Here.
And Vice Mayor Barbara Langdon.
Here.
And Commissioner Kevin Van Ostenbridge.
Here.
Commissioner Alan Mayo.
Here.
Councilmember Joe Nunder. Here. And we have our non-voting advisor, District Secretary L.K. Nandum.
Here.
And other members of the board. Mayor Bryant indicated she was not able to be here this morning. And Mayor Arroyo might be trying to join online. And Commissioner Broof is not in attendance.
Do we know, is Mayor Bryant with us online? Do we know?
No, she's not able to be here online. And you do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, we'll go ahead at this time. I'm going to do a recognition here after we do the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd stand, please.
Yeah, I know. It's a trick.
Commissioner Servia, would you like to do the invocation?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let us pray. Dear God, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to be focused on improving mobility, and nurture the bonds of community. Today, we also pray for the protection of the people of Ukraine. Please watch over and guard them with your peace and endurance. And for our world leaders who are making consequential decisions, may your wisdom, courage, and godly counsel be their guide. Amen.
Amen.
The Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Commissioner Servia, thank you for recognizing Ukraine. I was going to have a moment of silence for that as well. Right now, I would like to acknowledge that we have a real special guest with us today, and it's Jim Bennett, who used to be past chair of this board from Venice. Jim, it's really nice to see you. It's been a long time. It's good to have you. All right, moving right along, we'll now go to public comment. Is there anyone from the public that would like to come forward and speak? You'll have 2 minutes. Y'all are too nice in here. Okay. Not seeing any public comment, we'll close that and we'll go right into reports. First, we'll start with Secretary Nandum with the Department of Transportation.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm going to give a couple of updates about the department and then turn it over to Tanya for a few project updates. So our Secretary of Transportation has decided to leave the department. He's actually selected to be the Executive Director for GOA, the Greater Orlando Aviation Authority. So he's promised that he's going to stay with the department till the legislative session is over, which is in a couple of weeks. After that, he's going to start working with GOA. Our Assistant Secretary of Engineering and Operations, he decided to go to the dark side, which is a consultant world.
Dark side.
Yeah, which is a consultant world, but he's going to be very much missed. He's been a great resource for us too, and the position for the secretary has been advertised. Transportation Commission has advertised the position, and they'll be going through the interview process and recommend a candidate to the governor's office. So hopefully we'll have a great leader like our previous secretary, or soon-to-be previous secretary. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Tanya.
Over here.
Well, we can do it, Dave, do you have a preference?
Well, we have some presentations that will be later on, specific to Interstate 75 and lots of projects within the region. But if there's anything else that you have, we would take that now.
Good morning, I'm Tanya Merkel with FDOT. I'm just going to give you some quick updates that we have on River Road. We had a public meeting and there was a great turnout for that, both virtually and in person. So most of the questions were respective to the noise levels and what was going on with that, noise walls. We don't have any noise walls in the contract, so that's where that will be. And there's also some questions about the partial median U-turns that we have, the U-turn that's designed there for Center Road. So we've been educating the public on how that works. I-75 at State Route 70 interchange, that project is moving forward. They've had some delays in laying the final asphalt because of the temperatures. When they're below 65 degrees, they couldn't lay the asphalt, so now that things are warming up, they're progressing. They're hoping that there'll be a final acceptance gauge towards April, and that's where we're at on that side. Are there any questions that you have?
Not seeing any.
Okay,
Thank
thank you.
Before we move forward on this, are we live streaming? I know there was a question as to whether or not we could.
We
We
are.
are? Okay, good. And I didn't ask you, Nanette, do we have any public comment that you're aware of?
No, we do not.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, moving right along, MPO Executive Director, Dave.
Thank you, Chair Bach. I want to say that we're going to have a busy meeting in May. We don't anticipate a meeting in April. We hope we don't need one, or in June. But we have some crucial items at the next meeting, which will be the Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP, that is adopted every year, that goes hand in hand with the FDOT work program, and that is important, and we'll be sending that out for public comment as soon as we get the information from FDOT. They're still working on the work program. We'll also be putting out for public view the next Unified Planning Work Program, which is the 2-year budget document that will cover the next 2 fiscal years. So you'll see that before the next meeting. And we are getting more and more information kind of trickling in regarding the bipartisan infrastructure bill, as it's come to be known. That bill, we're starting to see some of the funds show up in projections, and most of them are not yet showing up in the work program. But it's coming, and overall, we're anticipating a 35% increase in formula funds for Florida. The 13 existing grant programs that are funded through federal highway authorization bills are continuing, and there are 21 new competitive grant programs. So they'll be issuing notices of funding availability over the next couple of years on some of those programs. Right now, some of them aren't funded yet fully because they are operating under continuing resolutions for the current fiscal year, and so we'll see what Congress does. But many of those programs are focused on the federal planning emphasis areas. FDOT also has planning emphasis areas, which are modeled on or work hand in hand with the federal emphasis areas and funding opportunities. The new ones, or the ones that are high focus, are safety, equity, resilience, and emerging mobilities, technology and automated vehicle type issues. So as we get links, we will be sending those out to the Technical Advisory Committee. If we get some good, solid information, I'll send that out to the full board as well. But, we're seeing that come trickle in, and it bodes well for the next few years of transportation. On the other hand, we're also seeing supply chain issues, cost increases. So, an increase in funding may or may not mean a whole lot of new projects. And we'll work closely with the department to leverage your funds and their funds and make good things happen. At your places, Commissioner Cutzinger had asked about what happened to that roundabout analysis before and after that we had asked about. And so we did work on the document that you have there, and Winona prepared most of this, and other staff contributed. But she analyzed 500 crash events at 14 roundabouts for which data is available between 2011 and last year. And these are at roundabout intersections in both Sarasota and Manatee counties. And one of the questions that had come up over the years is, are these national statistics that we hear about great reductions in fatalities and serious injuries borne out by data within our area? And the answer is generally absolutely yes. Roundabouts, as Federal Highway has said for years, are a proven countermeasure for reducing fatalities and serious injuries, and that was borne out by the numbers within our two counties. Interesting facts that are presented there. A lot of people have heard of the Jacaranda and Venice roundabout that was constructed in 2011, and it was improved upon in 2016, and the actual frequency of crashes increased slightly from 2016 to 2021, but the number of injuries decreased significantly, and it decreased even more after FDOT worked with Sarasota County to improve that roundabout and make it function, and you don't hear as many complaints about it anymore either. It actually works quite well for a high-volume roundabout. That roundabouts don't always reduce the number of crashes, but in some cases they do. So some of that is broken out in a little bit of detail there. Of the roundabout crashes, most of those were speed related, and in some cases, people said, "Oh, I wasn't paying attention," or "I didn't see something." The very few involved pedestrians or bicyclists, and that's always a concern, especially with bicyclists and how bicycles are expected to enter a lane of traffic at the roundabout. But generally speaking, that's, even though that's an area that needs to be looked at in design of the roundabouts, our roundabouts are functioning pretty well or very well even for bicyclists and pedestrians. So they're reducing the frequency of fatalities and serious injuries. We don't have to go into the discussion of this today, but if the board would like to further discuss this, we anticipate roundabouts are part of the solution. We're going to be talking about safety later as you hear the details of the Destination Zero policy and plan that we put together with the consultants based on the board's questioning of, well, how are we going to get to zero? And these are some of the ways that we will be working with your jurisdictions to help achieve continuing gains in safety.
Thank you, Dave. I think it's very interesting that the people, the community that the citizens that I speak with, the most interesting thing that I hear is how people are just not familiar with roundabouts, and so they're scared and they go into them. I mean, I saw one the other day literally stop in the roundabout and stopped his car and just sit there like he didn't know what to do. So, we probably really need to try to come up with an idea on how to educate the public on using roundabouts. So, but they certainly can be productive. Any questions?
Those are mostly people from Sarasota and Manatee County. No problem.
I can't believe he got elected. I mean,
It's always painful when a sister county, because of its jealousy, attacks another. It's always very painful.
I'm just looking forward to the discussion about Longbow Key coming into Sarasota County later.
There you go. Thank you.
I didn't
Are
want
you still going to
any,
be a commissioner? I'm not sure.
I didn't want any age jokes about Longbow Key either.
Thank you, I agree. Longboat Key is staying where it's at. The chair said so. Commissioner Serbia.
Yes, thank you. Dave, do you have any data that talks about the number of vehicles that go through a standard signalized intersection in comparison to the roundabouts? Or, because I hear from people that it doesn't move as many cars, but I think that that's not accurate.
No, it isn't generally, but it can get to the point where at full capacity, if a roundabout is bumper-to-bumper traffic, in some areas, they have had to signalize a roundabout in order to provide those breaks, which in a normal operation or not less than peak hour operation are natural, and they provide a smoother flow of traffic. So, I do not have anything specific on at what point our roundabouts might reach that. We see Fruitville, and the problem isn't so much the roundabout, perhaps, as the US 301 in Fruitville intersection, and that backs up quite a ways, but I don't think there's any plans for grade separation at that location. Would not be cost effective. It's a challenge.
The other question I have, and I think I know the answer to this, but I'm asking it because I hear it a lot, is that on our major DOT roadways, that the bigger trucks have difficulty maneuvering through a roundabout. But I know that we use, engineers use auto turn when those are designed so that we don't have those problems, right?
I do
So-
not think that's a major problem, and I would ask some, especially since you asked about the state roads, if Secretary Nandem would agree. I mean, they've worked closely with the agricultural vehicles and trucks to make sure that the roundabouts that are planned out east will be able to accommodate those trucks down the.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner, so when we design any intersection treatment, whether it is a roundabout or a traffic signalized intersection, we make sure we design it for the design vehicle, right? And when you get to roundabouts, there is a provision that's provided inside of the circle, which is called a truck apron. And so when the trucks are actually navigating through the roundabout, the rear vehicles generally go up on the truck apron because we designed for them to do that. It's a mountable curb, and they use that as a path for them to navigate through the roundabout. We've done roundabouts on State Road 64, and both of them have heavy truck traffic going through them, right? And they're working fine, so they. And we've have a couple of roundabouts in Polk County where we got heavy truck traffic going through, and we actually have testimony from Mr. Ellis Hunt, who was very concerned about a roundabout being built and his fruit trucks actually passing through the roundabout. And once it's done, he says that it's the best thing that happened. So,
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, I'd like to add, look at Tropicana. They're on 64 going through the roundabouts. They do a great job. I've seen 42-foot RVs going through them, actually. Commissioner Mayo.
Yeah, just real quickly, I've had to sit down with a lot of groups about this, and I would offer, when you are talking to groups, first of all, I can remember in the city of Sarasota, I'm not going to speak for them, with the big boat parade and the big Christmas parades, people just have to take a breath and look, and as Secretary Nandem said, those are mountable curves. They're done deliberately. The truck rolls right over it. It's not bumping over a 5 or 6 inch curb. And also there's going to be those very odd instances where it backs traffic up. But I would just look people straight in the eye and say, how would you like to stop 2 or 3 times for a traffic light of 1, 2, or 3 minutes each? So the roundabout, you have to slow your speed down. And the other thing, I just think it's a public education thing. I keep telling people, go to the roundabout, look, and proceed. Just look quickly to the left, if you even have to. You have the yield, first in goes. And I also get the comment, why do they always put trees or big public art in the middle? And that's because the jurisdictions don't want you looking at what's coming at you. That's why they block your view in an aesthetically pleasing way. So we've had to live with that. And I have to tell you, anybody who tells you Jacaranda is not an extreme major improvement after the $1.1 million that was spent, they just never witnessed it before.
Right. I'd have to agree with that statement. Any other comments before we move on? All right, not seeing anyone, we'll go ahead. All right, I guess I'm next. Dave, are you finished? Is that all of you?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'll go ahead with the MPOAC report. We did have an executive board meeting last week. It was actually held in the Manatee County BOCC conference room. We are, at this point, looking at bylaws and all kinds of things. We're basically having to revamp, if you will. Maybe that's a good word, Dave. Revamp the MPOAC, which will also, of course, we'll be reporting to you when we do come up with any decisions on anything as to what those changes are. So it's going to take a little time. We are going to start meeting. The executive board is more often. Every time we have a governing board meeting in Orlando, we're going to also have an executive board meeting so we can try and get this done quicker. Lots going on with that. Any questions on the MPOAC before I move forward? All right, not seeing anything. I'll go ahead at the same time and do the MPO chair report. This is a special day. We have the Florida Bicycle Association recognized one of the MPO volunteers, Rich Garrett, as Bike Advocate of the Year. I mean, that is amazing. That's huge. And the award will be presented today by Mark Schieffer. I hope I said that right. The Florida Bicycle Association Board of Directors, please.
I've asked Nanette, who does everything, to take a couple pics of whoever steps up.
You do know Nanette, don't you? Yeah, she does. She does everything.
Well, good morning. As Chair Ball said, I'm Mark Schieffer. I'm a board member of the Florida Bicycle Association. And the simple purpose of the FBA is to make bicycling better for everybody. And we do this by providing educational materials on safety, legislation, lobbying in Tallahassee, Florida legislation, and we support local cycling advocates. Every year we recognize a business, a bike club, and an individual who has worked to make cycling safer in their area. And this year I'm very honored to recognize the Citizen Advocate of the Year, as I'm particular, as he's a great friend and very deserving. This individual has served on safe cycling coalitions, is a member of the Sarasota Manatee BPAC committee, is a member of two very important local bike clubs, Gulf Coast Fellow, who's led safety advocacy for the last 3 or 4 years in our area, and he's a member of the SMBC, Sarasota Manatee Bicycle Club, who's the largest bicycle club in our area. Anytime there's safety issues come up or anything about safety comes up, this individual is there. He's always willing to help and be part of every committee or any group that has anything to do with safety. He also spearheaded a recent change to Route 70 and Lakewood Ranch that made that bike lane much safer for cyclists and pedestrians. It was not a good situation before, and Rich got the MPO involved, local bike clubs involved, key individuals involved in the area, and we resolved the issue. He's also, as Chairman Ball said, he's the MPO Vision Zero hero for this last year. So without further ado, I'd like to proudly present the 2021 FBA Citizen Advocate of the Year Award to my friend, Richard Garrett.
I'd like to say a couple of words. First of all, this is a great honor that's bestowed upon not only myself, but also, I believe, this organization, because without the leadership of Dave Hutchinson and the support of his staff, as well as the support of various county mobility coordinators, city mobility coordinators, and other bike clubs, we would not be able to put Sarasota Manatee on the map as far as doing everything we're doing to improve the safety of cycling and vulnerable users. Additionally, biking has increased about 30% or more, and I heard it's like the number 3 or number 4 reason people come and visit our area. So I'm hoping for 2022, when working with Mr. Hutchinson and others, that we can further our efforts to make bikes safer, make it safer for pedestrians. And that's going to include education. It's going to include infrastructure changes, such as getting the grass out of the bike lanes. You know, you drive by and you see the grass this far. Well, that leaves us 2 feet to ride in instead of 3. But mostly education we need to focus upon, and I know we'll get the support necessary to do that. And again, I would thank you, because it's truly an honor to be part of the MPO and the committees I've served on, and to see the success that we have been able to achieve as a team. And I think, you know, this does bring, I think, a hero status to the Sarasota Manatee MPO within the state of Florida, because it was a team effort. And thank you very much, David, for all your support. Thank you, board, for your support of what David and his staff have been able to do. And thank you, commissioners and city officials, for what your mobility coordinators have been able to do. Together, we will improve in the following years and get closer to Vision Zero. Thank you.
Rich, we want to say congratulations, well-deserved award. And you know what? I know exactly what intersection you're talking about on State Road 70 there at Lakewood Ranch Boulevard and Lorraine Road, both. So good job. Thank you
If I
for all
can
the
make one
help.
further comment?
Yes,
The
sir.
job is half done. It's green only on the one side. We need it done on the other side. We'll work on
I
that.
try to give him praise. I take it back. No, Rich, thank you. You're really,
Thank you
you're an
very much.
asset.
It's an honor.
Yeah, you're an asset. All right, we'll move on now to the consent agenda. Is there any item that a commissioner would like, or councilman would like to have moved? No, not seeing any. All right, Dave, would you name them all off, please?
Certainly, for the record, the consent agenda includes the board meeting minutes of January 24th, 2022, updates to the Manatee County Transportation Disadvantaged Local Coordinating Board bylaws and the Sarasota County Transportation Disadvantaged Local Coordinating Board bylaws reflecting new chairs in the annual membership. And a resolution related to our public transportation grant agreement for transit projects. We were asked to add some additional language to that grant related resolution that was previously approved by the board. And it authorizes the chair and the executive director to execute the agreement, and it has the agreement number added. There's a modification to the Uniform Planning Work Program. It's an administrative modification, moving lines from staff administrative budget to consultant administrative budget to accomplish some of the consultant tasks that the board approved at the last meeting.
All right, thank you, sir. Do I have a motion and a second? Second?
Second.
We have a motion by Mayor Brown with a second by Commissioner Van Ostenbridge. Any discussion? All right, we'll go ahead and vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It is approved unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, moving right along. Action items, 6A, 2022 project priority.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So just bringing back the 2022 project priorities for y'all. We brought them to you in January for your initial review, as well as to the TAC in both months. We received some editorial comments from several counties and cities regarding the priorities, changes of some limits, naming conventions and next phases. There weren't really any changes to the projects on the list in general. They were mostly just changes in terms of, project name, description, the way they'd like them to look on the priority list. So really we're looking for you today. I will note there was one typo on the cover sheet. The next 5-year work program will be 23, 24, 27, 28. So that's only one thing on there for your all reference. Other than that, we're just looking for an approval of the project priorities so that they can be distributed and submitted to the department by March 15th. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
All right, I'm gonna have to have a motion on this, and we'll have to vote by showing hands. So,
I move approval, Commissioner Baugh.
I'm sorry, who's the second? Okay, a motion to approve by Commissioner Serbia with a second by Councilman Saunders. Saunders. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Raise your hands, please.
Aye.
All right, it is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, 6B. Kind of wondered.
I'll just give a little background on this as well. So Chris has done a great job at Tyndall Oliver, formerly Tyndall Oliver, now Benish. We've been working with him for the past approximately year or so on our Vision Zero safety effort. As you all mentioned over the last couple of years, we've really moved from how can we where are our targets, why are we performing poorly, how can we do to improve that, and then to a conversation of how can we reach zero. The state's taken that initiative. Many of the other MPOs around the state have taken the initiative to move towards Vision Zero, and this action plan and policy that's being brought for you today is kind of culmination of that, and how we're planning to address those based on the 5 E's, which I'll let Chris go ahead and dive into. But really, it's brought forward by all of you, your staffs, as well as the state's guidance on how we want to reach our safety targets going forward. So with that, I'll hand it over to Chris.
Good morning, Chris.
Good morning. Ryan did a great job introducing that. Just for the record, Chris Keller with Benish. Thank you for having me here today. Hopefully we can get presentation going. Oh, anyway, I'll get started. So
There it goes.
perfect.
Yeah.
So a little introduction just to what Destination Zero is before we kind of get into the two separate items that I'm bringing forward to you guys today. So what is Destination Zero? Really, it's the MPO's effort to reduce fatal and serious injury crashes on the roadways within Sarasota and Manatee County. So it's kind of an overall effort to do that. So why destination? So you hear a lot of different terms. So there's Vision Zero, there's Road to Zero, Path to Zero, a lot of different things. So why did we come up with the term Destination Zero? Part of that is that while we want to see change start today, really we want to see it start yesterday, we know that it's a long road to get to where we want to eventually be. We know that there's going to be, I'm going to use some pretty bad puns, but we're going to get rerouted. There's going to be detours. There's going to be speed bumps, potholes along the way that we need to react to get to our ultimate goal and to reducing fatal and serious injury crashes. We also recognize that it's not a sprint, that this is a marathon, that it's a long-term commitment, and that it's something that we have to work on every day to get to there. So it's our path towards zero, but it really is a destination that we're hoping to get to along the way. So why Destination Zero? So in a 5-year period between 2015 and 2019, there were 556 fatal crashes and well over 5,700 serious injury crashes on the roads here in Sarasota and Manatee County. We look at the trends. So while we've seen some positive trending over the past few years, namely from a spike in 2016, when we look at a good 10-year period, we see that we are increasing that trend in overall fatal and serious injury crashes. In fact, between 2011 and 2019, we saw a 78% increase in fatal and serious injury crashes over that time period. Now, when we take that and we break out just the fatal crashes. So while we saw kind of a peak in 2016 and a downward trend in our combined crashes, when we look at just fatal crashes, we're really seeing that trend and that arrow is pointing in a direction that we don't want to see it happening. So one of our tools, right, as we looked at was how can we enact policy to help get us to where we want to go? So big question. So don't we already have policies that address safety? Aren't we already doing things? And the answer is yes, we do. So why are we looking at a policy, a resolution today? Well, we want to refocus our efforts, want to specifically call out the goals of Destination Zero to reduce fatal and serious injury crashes. We think that it will help to demonstrate and to redemonstrate the area's commitment to this issue. It will help to give the action plan, to legitimize the action plan, give it a little bit more teeth, and really kind of kickstart the effort towards our Destination Zero goals. So when we're looking at developing language for a policy, what are some questions we ask? So what do we want the policy to do? We want it to provide us with guidance, clear understanding, some priorities, to establish priorities on what we should be looking at, identifying measures so that we can monitor our success and monitor our direction. But ultimately, we felt that the policy and resolution provides accountability to what we're doing. So with that, I think you guys have in front of you, there was some draft language there. If there's any questions on that, happy to take it.
Yeah. Chris, thank you for the presentation. I do have a question.
Yes.
We have seen tremendous growth in Sarasota and Manatee, as well as, of course, an increase bringing forth this today. But, has that been taken into consideration in these figures, the difference in the population?
Yes, and we've looked at, and as part of the process, we looked at rates. So one, the number of fatal and serious injury crashes as population, as a ratio to population increases, and then just overall VMTs, so the amount that people are driving. And we're still seeing that those are increasing. So while we're getting more people, the number of fatal and serious injury crashes are kind of outpacing our growth rates and our driving rates. So we're seeing an increase in those rates, as well as the overall numbers.
Commissioner Mayo, love it.
Yeah, she asked part of my question. You are indexing this by fatalities, crashes per 1,000 population. Are you also indexing it by lane miles traveled? And you can get that information as averages. Because every time I think about this, you are pedaling, everybody's working real hard, pedaling as fast as they can, and pun intended, you're pedaling uphill.
Yeah.
Because whatever progress you make, there's more people, more lane miles built, more lane miles traveled, more cars registered, and you are indexing that so people can see the progress you're making.
Yes, that was part of the process and the development of the action planning, looking at it. And then really, to get off topic of it, we saw some really kind of interesting trends. And we actually went back to, I think it was 2005, and looked at kind of the trends there. And so we saw like how the recession in 2007, 2008 impacted driving, and like kind of the shadow effect of the recession, and how when we kind of look at our overall crash numbers, our VMT numbers, the number of registered drivers in the two-county area really kind of started to pace where it was in 2006, 2007, about 2014, 15, and we kind of saw we picked back up with our overall crashes there and those rates there. So you are right that it is a challenge. That's part of this, and we'll get into that with the action plan, that it's a recognized challenge, what we're asking to do. But yes, we have looked at those numbers.
Thank you.
LK, did you have anything to add, sir?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I just want to say, first of all, I want to commend the MPO for starting the process for adopting a policy and an action plan towards Destination Zero. But one big thing that we've observed, and Federal Highway is pushing this, is safe systems approach, and you're going to hear in the presentation soon. The premise is mistakes are going to happen, right? People are going to make mistakes, and we often, as engineers, we always put driver behavior as a reason why crashes happen, and then, if drivers can drive safely or more responsible, then we won't be in this situation, right? I think the fundamental premise is we need to figure out, if mistakes are going to happen, how do we avoid that severe crash, right? if we all start thinking about it from that perspective and work towards an action plan that's focused on that, I think we're going to make a difference. As more people are moving into the region, congestion is increasing, right? But what we are observing is even though congestion is increasing, the fatal crashes are not going down. So while there is a direct correlation, there is a fundamental issue related to fatal crashes, and the reason why fatal crashes are happening or severe injury crashes are happening. So part of the action plan, I would think, is we need to focus on the high injury network and then develop that action plan so that we control speeds, which is a real issue for fatal crashes to happen, and then figure out what are those treatments if mistakes happen and we can save lives. And roundabout conversation is a very good conversation that we had, right? We don't see crashes go down, but the type of crashes and the severity of the crashes happen at those intersections when we have roundabouts installed at the intersections is the key. So really commend you guys taking the step towards it.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Serbia.
Yes, thank you very much. I love this project and initiative, and thank you for your presentation. When I speak with our sheriff about it, he tells me things such as, well, we see so many people dying at Cortez and 41 because of the land uses that are on either side of the roadway. And we have bars on one side and parking on the other, and people are moving back and forth. And he believes that land use is contributing to the effect. And so I guess my question is, are we drilling down to specific intersections and looking at where the greatest fatalities are and trying to understand why they are different in one location versus another?
So I'll say that is part of the process that the action plan lays out. We did look at some previously top 20 high injury crash corridors and did a snapshot of what's going on there. To the the discussion of how land use and talk about it in the action plan, that it's a complex issue. There's a lot of moving parts and competing factors to why severe injury crashes happen at certain locations. We recognize that as part of this. That's part of why in the development of the action plan, we really sought with the working groups to try to get multiple agencies at the table, maybe people that weren't always in the same room together to speak and to share ideas. And then that's really part of the focus moving forward with this. And I'll state that, and I'll state it again in my presentation, that we really see this as the beginning. So it's the end of my effort in developing the action plan and some policy language, but it's really your guys' beginning of this discussion and of this moving forward. So yeah, that's definitely part of it. So I mean, in going in, the approach and the model we followed is a safe systems approach. It takes a look initially at a system-wide, an area-wide approach, but then yes, you drill down to where those locations are to try to understand those specific issues as well.
Thank you. And so my final comment is, and I have a meeting with our sheriff next week, and I'm going to ask him for increased speed patrols on some of our major roadways, because there is a relationship between speed and serious injury and fatalities. And that is probably the biggest problem that I hear at every neighborhood meeting that I go to, is that too many people are speeding and there's no patrols. So, hopefully the DOT and the MPO can collaborate with our local sheriffs and say, how are we going to work on this together?
All right.
I'll just add one thing on that note. As Chris saying, this is just the start. This policy looks to enact, an action, an advisory group similar to our BPTAC and other types of advisory groups that we've established, with the goal of continued cooperation between, DOT, ourselves, and all of your local jurisdictions, and bringing in people beyond just traffic engineers, but also law enforcement, education, all those types of things that Chris will allude to. So, the aim of this policy is to kind of kick this off and use the MPO as kind of a mediator between all of you in reaching this goal.
Vice Chair Hutzinger, did you have anything to add?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for the study. I think that was great on the roundabouts, and that is a great way to bring down fatalities. So I appreciate the information. That'll help talking to folks about that, because get pushback on that. So to be able to present those facts, that's really important. The other thing, I have to believe that a lot of the serious injuries are due to distracted driving, especially with texting and driving. People not watching what's going on, they're looking at their phones. And along those lines, we're in the next 10 years, I think we're going to see dramatic changes to our vehicles as far as just safety features and automatic braking and, even automatic driving. Do you think that's going to impact this study? And do we have anything to add to that conversation about how I see less expensive vehicles coming out with these features as well? I'm wondering if that's going to have an effect and if we have a role to play in advocating for some of those features.
Yeah, I definitely do. So the distracted driving one, we talk about that in the action plan, and we definitely talked about it quite a bit in the working groups and the challenges that we currently have in our crash report data. So those crash reports are legal documents. The officers that are filling them out can't just kind of assume that someone was on. So that you have to have someone admit or witness that they felt is strong enough to be able to put that on. So we kind of admit that there's a need for better data, potentially a need for stricter distracted driving laws as well. And that's something that we felt that you guys could be an advocate for. On the vehicle technology side of things, absolutely. That's one of the actions that we put in there is to advocate for more advanced vehicle technology as that roll out. That is definitely a tool and definitely something to consider in moving forward to this. And hopefully that's something exciting that will help to curb this and start moving that arrow and the needle in the right direction.
Okay, thank you.
That's probably, Dave, a great topic for the MPOAC as well to have jointly.
It is. Safety is a very high priority. The working group and the policy, several of you participated in developing this program and getting it to this point. And certainly, we've worked with the Technical Advisory Committee, the Community Traffic Safety Teams, Chris, how many people or how many meetings were held to get it to this point? And then, like you said, this is kind of the beginning.
Well, yeah, and I mean, we held 3 working group discussions, and those were focused on developing the plan and really the coordination and collaboration. And I'll blend my presentations, but part of that and this being done through the MPO is that the MPO was already set up to be that collaborative body. You've got representation from all these different agencies. You've got people that are already showing up at committee meetings from multiple jurisdictions. So it was a little easier for us to get everybody together. And I really think that, some people could say, well, is the MPO the best place to have this plan? And I think that the collaborative nature of the MPO makes it a really great place to hold this plan. But we had 3 focused working group meetings to get to the plan. But as Ryan mentioned, part of the plan and part of the policy is to continue that as a more formal committee. These were volunteer working groups, but hopefully to get people on there that are dedicated to carry on this conversation moving forward.
Thank you, Chris. Commissioner Van Ostenbridge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I like what I've heard from fellow board members. I like what staff has presented. My concern is messaging. Whether we like, this is a much larger initiative than just our MPO, and obviously we did not get to choose the name Destination Zero, but you want to be careful when you have a name like that because it's like, the last name I would have chosen, because it creates it sets an unattainable goal, right? And you have a lot of people that see that and they think, oh, here's government setting an unattainable goal to ensure a lifetime of job security. So when we come forward and present our plans, let's be sure that we are stating what our goals are, even if it's just in a nutshell. And I haven't heard that today. I know it's in the binder on page whatever and paragraph, whoever. But the press is here and the public is here and this is being televised. So obviously we're dealing with more, well-connected members of the public, that are paying attention to these meetings. I don't think the average person is streaming this tonight. But let's be sure that we are putting out sort of in a nutshell, something quotable, quick and dirty. Here are our goals for this year. That would be my only concern is making sure that we get our message out. It's a great plan. It's a good idea. We just want to make sure that we're conveying that to our constituents. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, Commissioner Ziegler.
I mean, that's exactly what I was going to say, is it's so tough to measure this, and the narrative about it being Destination Zero, which is obviously the goal everyone has, but I don't know how attainable it is at the end of the day if you ever really get to zero. So you have that perception that you're set. In business, I like to set goals that are clear, and you have clear metrics, and you have clear results. And this is tough because I don't know how attainable it is, to be honest. We want to get there, but also with kind of what Commissioner Mayo and Commissioner Baugh touched on are the other factors that are constantly changing. Like when you look at the traffic or the accident stats, we've had people move here like crazy. I mean, anyone that's driven on the roads know there are a lot more cars on the roads now. We've blown up as a destination for people to visit. They're driving cars as well. We had COVID that hit, that people weren't flying, they started driving, and our tourism, I mean, if you look at our numbers, was pretty darn good considering COVID. And all those people were getting in cars and driving here because they couldn't fly or they didn't want to fly, right? So all of those are variables that constantly are changing. So it's hard to set a goal, and then you have different variables that come into play, and you can't really get a good one-to-one comparison to get to that goal. So it's just kind of tough. I mean, this is more of a comment, I guess, than a question. But when we do stuff, it needs to be the per capita, but it also needs to take in, and I don't know how you do this with all these various factors, but the tourism and everything else. So it is, look, obviously everyone supports getting to zero. I think that's a no-brainer. But how we get there and setting clear metrics, I think, is important, because otherwise it'll be just a lofty goal. And every time we say, well, what are we trying to do? Well, we're trying to get to zero. Okay, well, let's back that up. And what are the steps to get there? So.
Commissioner Servia.
Thank you. And hey, look, I understand your comments, both Kevin Van Ostenbridge and Mr. Ziegler. I understand. It's going to be hard to get to zero, but anything less than zero is not acceptable. We have to keep striving for no deaths on our roadway, period. We can't, I don't know if you guys have seen that commercial where the guy says, what's an acceptable number? And the guy goes, 50? And then out come 50 of his family members and friends. And he's like, oh, no, well, not that 50. So, I mean, I understand that we want to make goals that are achievable, but we have to continue to shoot for a goal that is no more fatalities on our roadways. I just don't see it any other way. I really appreciate Commissioner Mayo's comments, too, that we have to explain to the public and analyze it in vehicle miles traveled. Because when you have more people on the roadway, you're going to have more fatalities. And so therefore, we've got to be able to understand what that means. Those are just my comments.
Commissioner Halpern.
Well, actually, I was going to say just what Commissioner Servia said is I think it's a good idea. I like the name Destination Zero. I think in 2 words, it conveys what we're working towards. And I think when doing any kind of planning for transportation, that should always be part of the goal is how do we plan this so that we can design the road, whatever we're designing, to get to zero fatalities. Obviously, it's not going to be an easy task. We probably will never get there, but if we don't have that goal, we for sure won't get there. So I think Destination Zero conveys exactly what we're aiming for.
Commissioner Van Ostenbridge and then Commissioner Ziegler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I don't disagree. It's bad optics to say we're okay with this number of fatalities, but I think maybe a percentage goal is maybe a smarter way to go and sort of leave a hard number out of it. And I'm just, you can always look at this from an emotional standpoint, but I'm just trying to be pragmatic about it. And we are funded by tax dollars, and people do expect results for their investment. People, we take money by force to have this committee and this board. We take it by force from our taxpayers, and they should be able to see measurable results for their investment. That's all. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Ziegler.
Well, I mean, just in response to, and for clarification, I guess,
Anyone that's run a business knows that when you set an unattainable goal for your team and they don't reach that goal, there's few things that could be more demoralizing. So I think that's the only reason why I bring up my feedback on it is, look, McDonald's wants to be the only person selling hamburgers in the entire country. They can set that as whatever lofty goal that they want and set that, but every single day they're coming in, they're not really looking at that and saying it's all or nothing to get there. It's what are the steps, and this is where it becomes important, whether it's a percentage increase or other metrics or other sub-goals, and that's what I'm concerned about is with staff, is what is staff looking at, and what are we looking at as an organization with those sub-goals so we reach them, and we see measurable lifts or measurable steps that are taken that the staff can kind of rally behind, give some high fives and say, good, we're marching towards our goal, right? So sometimes government, I mean, I've seen it. Look, I'm a county commissioner, I've worked in the State House, I've worked in Congress. Sometimes you have these goals that are just out there, they sound great for the headlines, but if you really want to accomplish measurable success, you have to set what those measurements are, and that's my only point on that. So I think everyone here agrees that we want to get to 0 fatalities, but how you get there step by step to encourage people and see what's working, because last thing I want to do is be authorizing or spending more money, whether it's in Sarasota County or anywhere else, towards something that we're not measuring and that we can't attribute these dollars led to this success. So I think that's the key point here, just to be clear.
I'm going to butt in here before I call on the next commissioner and LK. You know, this is a federal situation here. And unfortunately, I think for us, I think we would all agree, at least I do, with what Commissioner Van Ostenbridge and Commissioner Ziegler has said. You know, we need to make sure that we are showing some progress in some way and be realistic. But unfortunately, I know that right now we have to follow the federal guidelines that are given to us. So that's kind of tough right now. But anyway, Mayor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. No, I was just going to say that I think when we look at the merits of what everybody has said today, you know, everybody's thinking in the right direction, but I think what we have to do for the public, because I do agree, whether it's business, whether it's sports, when you set a goal that might not be attainable, then how many people are going to check out before they've ever checked in? And I think that's important to look at. Now, I think everyone in this room and probably everybody watching knows what my career is, so I see the outcomes of what this is. So I would be definitely for Destination Zero from the standpoint of what it creates. But the issue is if we don't create something or the messaging of what we're going to do, you know, really to say, hey, this is the ultimate goal, but here's steps 1 through 10 that are going to help us continue to work towards that. And if we don't have those measurable goals, then people are going to check out early on and they're just going to not even deal with it. So, you know, and I mean, we all deal with that in our municipalities and governments, that with messaging, and for us right now in the city of Bradenton, it's recycling and what we're going to do with that. It's not that what we're planning on doing is bad, it's probably going to be better, but it's the message that we can't get out. So to me, it's about the messaging and making sure something is achievable as we go up the ladder. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, sir. Secretary Nandam.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So great conversation, and you got to think about a vision as a desired state of outcome, right? You know, so we have to have that lofty goal, but the key is trying to figure out what those steps are, and to get to that lofty goal. And that's exactly what you're talking about, right? You know, what are those goals? And the approach that we've been taking, and I think you'll see in the action plan, is you need to define what your high injury network is. What are those corridors? Where are the problems existing? And to your point, Commissioner Servia, what is the root cause of those problems along those corridors? And then what do we need to do as far as action steps so that we can focus on those particular corridors? So if we define our priorities based on those high injury network and what our plan is, and tackle corridor by corridor, right, we can show the progress that you're talking about. And that's exactly where we need to go, is set our priorities, set our action plan, and then focus corridor by corridor.
I would totally agree. You know, you talk about attainable goals. We have to get everyone on board. And when I say everyone, it's all the citizens and visitors to this county, to these 2 counties. We can't do that unless we're talking about something that they will be able to see improve. So, yes, I would totally agree. It's a goal that we have, but at the same time, we've got to make it realistic to the public. Yes, sir, go ahead.
I go first. So I was a businessman. I had manufacturing plants that ran 24/7, had about 5,000 employees. We always set our safety goals at 0 deaths, always. And we thought of it more as a vision and a mission, not as the objectives for next year. And I think we did set our safety objectives for next year with realistic goals, and we looked at percent reductions. I think we just did that at a
Yes,
meeting or
last
two ago.
month.
So I am very supportive of the statement of what we're trying to do to be a vision, not necessarily next year's goals. And I spent about an hour and a half reading this document last night. For those of you all that haven't read it, it answers most of the questions that you all asked in the last 25 minutes. So they looked at seasons, age, time of day, day of the week, weekends, corridors, causes. I mean, I don't know how to slice and dice this any more than you all did, and there's just a wealth of knowledge that answers a lot of questions. So if you get a chance, again, it's an hour and a half read, but and I might encourage you to get it down to like 20 minutes. But there is really a wealth of data that wasn't in your presentation that kind of answers many of the questions around, did you do your due diligence and get to the point where we have real live actions that we can take over the next 2 or 3 years when we set our goals.
Yeah, and if I may, before we continue there, the two things, one that Commissioner Baugh pointed out, the first half and the things that we adopted in January are our federal requirements. Those we are mandated. You can either take a stance of 0, which we decided, not to because of the attainability. This step, and we did, the actual numbers, and we have a reduction plan and all those things in place. This was the next step, and as Vice Mayor Haycock pointed out, the action plan is exactly that. Those are the plan. The action plan lays out exactly how we're taking those steps to reach 0. Really, that's really our perspective, and we think, with a focused and dedicated front moving forward, that will actually. Yes, 0 is a lofty number. We are all aware of that. However, without taking the appropriate steps and having a policy in place and having an action plan in place, we certainly won't get there, and we really won't have a direction on how to attain those goals.
And we will be getting to the plan here shortly, I hope. Yes. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, Liz.
Actually, I appreciate the comments from Vice Mayor Haycock because that was sort of what I was going to say, is just because the goal is destination 0 doesn't mean you don't have attainable action plans in interim goals to keep working towards that end goal. And Mayor Brown, I don't know if anybody in the audience does, but I don't know what your profession is, so I don't.
You don't want to know.
Okay.
Just kidding.
But
Yes, sir, Councilman. Go ahead.
Chairman, I was in business too. I was in business too, and we had 15,000 trucks over the roadways on a daily basis. So our destination was 0, and we had a very good plan, and we are always was 0. If you don't set the goal the highest, I don't think you would ever achieve it. So, knowing that you would not have. Maybe not meet that every year, but our goal was, and what I don't like about government is that we get satisfied with this almost getting something done, versus you either get it done or you don't get it done. You don't almost get it done. And if you've ever seen the picture that's famous, is called the Bridge to Nowhere, and the Bridge to Nowhere looks beautiful, but there's no road on this side. There's no road on this side. So now they've used it as a trail. That's a pretty expensive trail. I don't like to see that. And personally, I've always set a high goal. I never did want to come in second. I was an athlete. My goal was to go to the Olympics. And you know what? Why I didn't go? Because of a car accident. Thank you.
All right, we're going to try and, yes, sir, Dave, go ahead.
I think that these comments are all extremely valuable to staff as we move forward. And I think that, the name of the plan is something that can be addressed in the future. It is a traffic fatality and serious injury reduction plan, and that doesn't necessarily sound as it's longer. But so the name is neither here nor there. But we used to say a lot more maybe when Jim Bennett served on this board. It's about the money. And one of the things that this plan and the policy will do is allow us working together to identify the specific projects and the specific funding sources through our state and federal partners to fund the projects that will help get the reductions that we have identified in our targets. And eventually, it's possible that we could get to zero, but that's certainly an aspirational goal. And the plan here is moving towards zero, not necessarily in 1 year. So I think that I hate to say it's about the money, because the money is only to do projects that solve real problems that help make our communities better and save lives. But it's kind of comes back to actually implementation of the program.
All right, we're going to try and move forward now. We need a motion and a second on this to adopt Resolution 2022-02.
Motion to approve.
I'm sorry, say that again, sir.
I said a motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Councilman Sanders with a second by Liz Albert. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It's approved unanimously. Moving right along, Chris.
All right, thank you. Really good discussion on that, and hopefully this next one, I think we talked a little bit about, but hopefully we'll answer some additional questions as soon as we get it back up. Remember where I started this one off. While we're waiting on that, I will say that part of the action plan and part of the Destination Zero was recognizing that our plan wasn't going to have all the answers. It was really to start conversations like this, which are hard and complex conversations. And part of that was getting that, taking what was our working group for this and moving it into a committee to establish what are the goals of it. We kept it as a pretty general goal to reduce traffic-related fatalities and serious injuries. We didn't set a necessary date for any certain numbers. We wanted to leave that up to the committee to take what is a blueprint, to take what our strategies and guidance and establish that as they see fit. All right, we're here.
There we go.
We're here. Yeah, so the action plan. I think I've kind of did that. Really, to repeat what I said, we set to create a plan that would be a guide. Also recognizing that developing this plan as part of the MPO, that the MPO is not an implementing agency. So the MPO is a planning organization, that the implementation of roadway projects are done at the county and the municipal and the state level. But the MPO does play a role here, can bring everybody to the room and for that conversation. So part of that is we want it to be a guide, not a prescriptive, this is how you do it, but here are some strategies, here are some steps, laying out a process that we think can help to reduce those crashes. Some objectives that we were asked to accomplish with this was to better align the MPO region with federal and state safety initiatives. As mentioned, Federal Highway Administration uses the Safe Systems approach, has set a goal of zero traffic fatalities and serious injuries. The state of Florida last year in the Strategic Highway Safety Plan established a goal of zero traffic fatalities and serious injuries. The FDOT has followed in on that as well. So we're trying to align our safety approach in this region to the federal and state approaches. We're also asked to identify what are some ways that we can start moving the needle, what are some steps that we need to take, what are some performance measures that we can look at to start monitoring our progress towards that, And then also hoping to use this as an implementation to get the local agencies to start considering adopting either similar plans or really just kind of helping to support the MPO's efforts. So mentioned the safe systems approach model. Not going to go through it in a ton of detail, but there's 6 main principles to that model that we developed our plan based off of. One is that no death or serious injury is acceptable. The other is that humans make mistakes. We can try to design the best and smartest vehicle. We can try to design the best and smartest roadways. We talked about roundabouts before, but someone is going to make a mistake. There's not a perfect driver out there. If you think that you are, you're wrong. There's not. We all make mistakes on a daily basis. It's recognizing that and that we're not going to get people to be a perfect driver. So how do we design a transportation system that recognizes that? Also, humans are vulnerable to injury. The human body was not designed to take impacts going at high rates of speed. We have our legs, we have our feet. About as fast as we run, if we hit a tree, that probably could survive that, but that's about as high naturally. So going at, speeds of 40, 45, 70, 80 miles per hour, and the forces and the energy exchange and those, the human body is not really designed to withstand those forces. Responsibility is shared. So it's not just traffic engineers, it's not just planners, it's not just you as a board, it's not just law enforcement that plays a role in this. It's really all of us. So it's us together. It's the public. A lot of this is a cultural shift. We can look at specific tools. We can do certain things, but until we get everybody to buy in, we know that this will continue to be a challenge. So it is a shared responsibility by everyone within the community. It really does take a proactive versus reactive approach. Now, we do react, and we do look at where are crashes occurring at higher frequencies and what can we do to be there. But how can we design and operate our transportation systems to avoid those situations from happening in the first place? And then finally, redundancy is a crucial element within the safe systems approach. That we know that certain elements will fail at certain times, that we want to have different layers to help protect when there is a breakdown within the system so that, yes, a crash may occur, but the severity of that crash isn't one that it kills or seriously injures the people involved in that crash. So there's much more detail in the report. There's a crash analysis appendix that goes into a lot more detail. But we wanted to make sure that this was data-driven, that we looked at the crash data, understanding that there are some limitations within the crash data. I talked about the distracted driving, knowing that, some of that we know there are some limitations, but what can we get away from this? A couple things, we looked at what are our top 3 fatal crash types. They're pedestrian crashes, which were 19% of our fatal crashes, run off the road, which is almost 19% as well, and then left turn crashes at about 16%. We also looked at, where are these happening from a system-wide? So we saw that a little over 60% of our, use the word KSI, but our fatal and serious injury crashes occurred on roadways with a speed limit of at least 45 miles per hour, and a little over 2/3 of our fatal crashes occurred on those roadways as well. I don't have the stat in front of me, but 2/3 of our roads aren't roadways with speed limits of 45 miles per hour or higher. Granted, I know they carry a lot of traffic, but it's still a disproportionate amount on those. Our multi-lane roadways, 4- and 6-lane roadways, account for a higher percentage of those as well. And then, yeah, we'll do with that. So impaired driving we have on there. Again, that's one of those that we talk about in the plan of how can we get better data, how can we work with our public health officials to get better hospital records of people that were brought in, that maybe we can use the supplement and better understand how impairment is playing a role in these type of crashes. Public and stakeholder engagement. So we definitely had this as part of the development of the plan, but recognize we'll see that some of our strategies, one of our E's was engagement, and that's an important role of this. But we had our working group meetings. We had a leadership group meeting, which some of you attended and were a part of, a public workshop, online survey, online comment map, all to kind of gain information to help in the development of this action plan. So, what are our actions? I'll say that we structured them around 6 E's, but first we recognize that there's some priority areas to look at. One being speed management. So the stat of 67% of our fatal crashes occurred on roadways with a posted speed limit of 45 miles per hour or greater. Also in the safe systems approach, that humans are vulnerable to injuries. The exchange of forces. We know that speed plays a major role in the severity of crash. We're not saying go slow down every single road. We know that that's not something we can just do, but recognizing the importance of speed management and how can we control and better manage speeds on our roadways to reduce the severity of injuries and these crashes. Vulnerable users. I mentioned 20% of our fatalities were involving pedestrians. People walking, people riding bikes, scooters. They don't have a steel cage and a vehicle around them to protect them. In these crashes, seeing a disproportionate amount of vulnerable road users involved in these most severe injury crashes as well. The better data collection. So things like how can we improve information on distracted driving? We get that question a lot. We know that it's a factor. We just don't have the reliable data there to back it up. So how can we improve our data collection? How can we get better data to understand really what is happening? Because if we really want to attack this and solve this issue, we need to have better data than what we currently have. And then support. Again, recognizing that we're asking you guys as an MPO board, but for this to be successful, we need the local agencies and the MPO's partners to also support and be a part of this process as well. So obviously, the action plan has a lot more than what's listed on here, but we structured our strategies and our actions around 6 E's. Engineering, education, engagement, equity, enforcement, and emergency response. Happy to ask questions specifically on those, but for sake of time, we structured them around those E's. And then we had a group that didn't really quite fit into any of those. So we call them the other. Some were policies, things like developing a Destination Zero committee, encouraging adoption of something similar at the local levels, reconvening the leadership panel. That was something they came out of that leadership group discussion that we had in the action plan of how can this group, one, maybe be expanded, but also meet at least annually or 2 times a year to focus just on this topic. So things like that were put into a other category. Performance measures, again, there's a long list in the action plan. We tried to arrange those and relate them back to the E's, but also have kind of some general categories there. So these are things that we can start measuring now. The priority of what we're measuring can be determined by that Destination Zero committee, is how that's kind of designed. But here's a long menu of things that we can monitor based on the actions that the plan has established. And to conclude my presentation is one, just recognizing that this action plan is a guiding document. It doesn't have all the answers to it. It's not claiming to. It needs to be a living document and to evolve over time. If we solve one crash issue, that doesn't mean another crash issue isn't going to pop up. So it's going to be this continuous monitoring and watching and flexibility built within the plan. The success of it really does, I mentioned, all of us working together. It really does take all of us. It can't just live within the MPO. It can't just live within one county. It can't just be a government effort. It really needs to be a concerted effort of all of us working together. And that this action plan is the beginning. So it's really designed to start the conversation, to get that conversation moving, to start the steps towards reducing fatal and serious injury crashes, to identify and set what are our metrics that we want to go, or do we want to establish targets? These are questions that the action plan kind of lays out and is saying that, this is the beginning of that conversation and leaving it up to you guys to set how do we get there. Here's a guide, but we're leaving it to you guys to establish how you move on that. So, questions?
Chris, thank you. Any questions? Commissioner Mayo.
Madam Chair, don't shoot me. I'm going to only take a minute, okay? Because I don't want to get publicly scolded, okay? Because we know each other that well. If we go to 6C, and I read this because this was my life before I got elected, running an engineering and planning firm. And go to page 9. Here's my concern. You all just accumulated an immense amount of information, and I think did a very, very good job. But as these numbers go out into the world, I just think some narrative. For instance, look at page 9, the bar graph, and it shows that people 65 plus are really got the highest bar. And I'll be 72 in 2 weeks. That doesn't mean that some foolish person who looks at this should say, you know what, based on this scientific report, everybody who's 65 and above should be taken off the roads. And I fear that they won't be that foolish. But another one, lane widths, it's same page. At 8 lanes, it's just a minuscule amount of the fatalities. And I bet that's true. So let's make every road 8 lanes and we'll have no crashes. Or go better to 10 lanes and it's 0. And I know that was not your intention, but at some point, for instance, take that 65 plus, a narrative, and I did read this, I couldn't find it. 65 plus has the highest number of killed or seriously injured, and yet we have to remember that there is much as 40 to 50% of the population. And that's the thing that I'd just love to see more of that in here, because you couldn't put everything in here. Yeah. But it's those type of things. And the top one, and then I'll be, Madam Chair, I'm almost done. 65 miles per hour is, man, that's my favorite speed. But of course, what percentage of the roads allow you to go that speed? And that's the type of thing, just a few 2-liner paragraphs, 2-sentence paragraphs that demonstrate that.
Yeah, and real quick, so the age one was in there to kind of demonstrate that these are not biased against, that these type of crashes and this most severe injuries occur within all age groups. We do know that as us as humans age, that our ability to survive high energy crashes is reduced. That's just a joy, I guess, of aging. Not that old, but I'm finding that I wake up with more aches and pains every day. But no, and to your part, like some of this we're using the data that we have. Mm-hmm. And that's part of that discussion, and was one of the priorities of this is how do we get better data? So, trying to attribute, the number of lanes and the speed to the crash data is currently a pretty heavy analytical task. We don't have great data on how many roads have, lane miles of multi-lane or 8-lane roads to compare to that. We have some, we have it in bits and pieces, but not necessarily all together. So part of that discussion is how can we better get this data more accessible and easier to make those connections between what we have in the crash data and what we can do to better understand and get that messaging out.
Thank you. And I would only add to my good friend, Al Mayo, who I'm so glad is back on this board. I think he and I would probably agree that it seems that I know some of the people in this room, I'm not going to mention any names. If you ride with them, you're terrified. I didn't mention any names, Kevin. Don't get excited. I'm just saying. The 65 or over crowd, I don't know. I think we get too much credit sometimes. But anyway, Commissioner Servia.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Commissioner Mayo, for those comments. They're very good because statistics matter, right? So when we have more drivers on the road that are in that age group, you're going to have more problems within that age group. So context matters. I like that this is a guide, based on our last discussion about Destination Zero being unattainable. I come from the planning world where everything is broken down into goals, objectives, and policies. And so the goals are the goals for 20, 30 years, and it's what we strive for. And the objectives narrow it down to how we might get there in the next decade, and the policies are the implementation mechanisms. So it makes a lot of sense. But you hit it on the head when you said more data. We need more data. When we look at almost 20% of our pedestrians are the ones that are losing lives or being seriously injured, I'd like to know why by location. Is it distracted drivers in a particular location? Is it we don't have enough infrastructure of sidewalks, bike lanes, or up to current standards? Is it right on red pedestrians that are being hit? Because if we have that data, then we can more easily address it specifically at each location. So that's what I look forward to. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Madam Chair, so obviously you've talked about federal guidelines and federal requirements, right? I would say it actually is a state that kind of imposed this, right? We adopted the Vision Zero or the Target Zero as a lofty goal. But one of the things that we have done is because of the importance of saving lives, I hired a safety administrator who reports directly to me. And the safety administrator is going to be working with our local partners, including the MPO, on developing and working in implementing these action plans. But going back to what I said is you got to focus on the high injury network. If you focus on the high injury network, then we're going to make a difference because you're targeted, right? And that's what we're going to be working towards. But, I have this board here, right? This high injury network is going to be part of your district, right? Commissioner Servia, US 41, Business 41 is your district, right? So we need a champion, and we need for you guys to be that champion because you have that local connections, right? And then we need each of your local agencies, not only the MPO, adopt this particular lofty goal and be part of the action plan. Because one of the slides towards the end, the recommendation is it's all of us working together, right? But if we don't have the counties and the cities adopting this and giving direction to your staff that, you're going to put your efforts toward it, we're not going to make a difference. So that's what we need from you guys. And then developing that action plan per corridor, and like you said, Commissioner, cause and effect. What is the cause and what is the effect, right? The breakdown that he provided did not get into what a context classification, we call context classifications. 80% of the fatal and severe injury crashes happen in those suburban commercial and suburban residential areas and those transitioning urban areas. So it's very focused areas in Sarasota, Manatee where you're having these problems. So that's where our focus need to be. And then I want to make a promise that as we work towards these action plans, we're going to bring in the resources to implement whatever recommendations that come out. Dave talked about funding, right? We'll make every effort to bring the funding that's needed to implement the recommendations that come out of these action plans. So all I'm asking is when you go back to your local commission meetings, right? Please work on adopting this at your local council, local commission level. That way, there is some accountability to your staff to be participating in this plan.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments before we move forward? All right, I need a motion, recommended motion, adoption of the Destination Zero Action Plan.
So moved.
We have a motion by Commissioner Servia with a second by Councilman Sanders. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It's approved unanimously. Thank you. Moving along. Number 7, DOT reports.
Good morning. So our first presentation is going to be a project development and environment study along I-75 from Moccasin Wall Road to south of US 301. So this project is studying the potential expansion of I-75 in the southern portions of Hillsborough County to Moccasin Wall Road in Manatee County. And this is being performed by District 7. So I would like to introduce the District 7 FDOT Project Manager, Amber Russo, who will go into further detail on this.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone.
Morning.
I do have some slides, but I'll just get started.
You might want to state your name too, just for the record.
Yes. My name is Amber Russo. I am the District 7 FDOT Project Manager for these two PD&E studies along I-75. Also with me today is Jeff Novotny, the Consultant Project Manager with American Engineering. The two PD&E studies we'll be giving you a status report on today are being done concurrently. There is a southern study along I-75 from Moccasin Wallow Road in Manatee County to south of US 301 in Hillsborough County. And then the northern study is along I-75 from south of US 301 to north of Bruce B. Downs Boulevard.
There we go.
There it is. Okay, thank you. All right, here's a map so you can get situated where the projects are. The one in purple is a southern study, and the one in green is the northern study. And the environmental documents being prepared for both of these projects are type 2 categorical exclusions. The purpose of these studies is to provide additional capacity and improve safety to better meet the future transportation demand in these rapidly developing areas of Manatee and Hillsborough counties. These improvements are expected to enhance I-75's overall regional functionality and improve the interstate's operating conditions. So first we'll start with a southern study. So these limits are approximately 23 miles long. The project would widen I-75 to provide 2 express lanes in each direction within the median. Mainline roadway improvements will take place entirely within the I-75 existing right-of-way. However, right-of-way will be required for stormwater management facilities and floodplain compensation sites. Today, I-75 is a 6-lane facility from Moccasin Wallow Road to Gibsonton Drive. The corridor in the section typically contains 3 general use lanes with a 10 to 12 foot shoulder on both the inside and outside. An 88-foot grass median separates the 2 directions of travel. And then from Gibsonton Drive to south of US 301, the roadway is a 6-lane facility with 3 general use lanes in each direction, but includes a 12-foot auxiliary lane as well. The preferred build typical section includes adding 2 12-foot buffer separated express lanes in each direction within the median, with 12-foot outside shoulders and a 15-foot inside shoulder. There are 3 interchanges within this southern study's limits. Improvements at the Big Bend Road interchange are being addressed under a separate project in coordination with Hillsborough County, and it is currently under construction. A diverging diamond interchange is proposed for the Gibsonton Drive interchange, while at State Road 674, operational improvements will be provided. Moving on to the northern study from south of US 301 to Bruce B. Downs Boulevard. Like the southern segment, this project will widen I-75 to the median and provide 2 12-foot express lanes in each direction. This segment is a distance of approximately 18 miles, includes the southwest quadrant of I-75, the I-75 and I-4 interchange from the Tampa Bypass Canal to the I-4 westbound ramps. These improvements will also take place predominantly within the existing right-of-way. However, right-of-way will be required for some stormwater management facilities, floodplain compensation sites, and near interchanges for ramp improvements. Currently, I-75 within this section contains 3 general use lanes in each direction with 10-foot inside and outside shoulders and an 88-foot grass median. This section also contains a collector-distributor or CD system from US 301 to State Road 60. There are 2 12-foot travel lanes in each direction and a 6-foot inside and 8-foot outside shoulder on the CD system. The preferred build typical section is consistent with the southern segment, adding 2 12-foot buffer-separated express lanes in each direction within the median. 12-foot outside shoulders and a 15-foot inside shoulder are proposed. There are 8 interchanges within this study's limits. Improvements at the interchange of I-75 and Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard fall under a separate FDOT project, and construction activities are anticipated to begin this year. For all other interchanges, ramp modifications and/or new ramps will be provided, except at the Bruce B. Downs interchange. As noted, the preferred build alternatives include adding express lanes. While general use lanes can be used by any vehicle, express lanes are additional travel lanes separated from the general use lanes intended to relieve congestion, improve safety, and provide users with travel options. Interchange access from the express lanes may be provided less frequently than that of the general use lanes to ease travel for those making longer regional trips. The express lanes can be managed by access, tolls, vehicle type, and/or vehicle occupancy. Future studies will evaluate how the express lanes are going to be managed. As part of these studies, we've evaluated the environmental effects associated with the improvements. The environmental analysis looks at several factors such as historic resources, wetlands, endangered species and their habitats, land use, community impacts, and noise impacts. There are proposed right-of-way impacts within both studies as discussed. In the southern section, there are no business nor residential relocations anticipated. However, in the northern section, there are 19 businesses and 17 residential relocations identified. To summarize, the projects will add 2 express lanes in each direction of I-75 from Moccasin Wallow Road in Manatee County to north of Bruce B. Downs Boulevard in Hillsborough County. It will include noise barriers where feasible, make improvements to interchanges, and acquire right-of-way for some mainline and ramp improvements, pond sites, and floodplain compensation sites. The preliminary costs associated with these projects is shown on this slide, and at the bottom you can find costs specific to the Manatee County portion. This is where we are in the process. Our public hearing was held on January 27th, 2022, and we anticipate approval by the spring of this year. As mentioned, the public hearing for both studies was held on January 27th. There were 29 in-person attendees and 83 people attended virtually via GoToWebinar. We received 19 verbal comments. The main concerns included the desire for noise abatement, especially barriers and vegetation, capacity to alleviate congestion, and safety concerns. We received many comments postmarked by the February 7th deadline and are responding to questions. This slide contains the link to the project website, and our contact information is also on here. And I want to thank you for your time and open it up to any questions.
Any questions? Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
My only question, I see you're going into the medians, and I always understood that the right-of-way in the medians was being reserved for possible rail. Is that not going to happen ever anymore, or are you still reserving a portion of it for that?
We got this question at your committee meetings as well, and Jeff answers. I'll let you say the same thing.
Hi, I'm Jeff Novotny with American Consulting, and we've been working on this study for a number of years. In conjunction with T-BARTA and their master vision plan, this portion of I-75 shows express bus, and a rail corridor would actually be off of the I-75 corridor from this portion of 75 that we're talking about. We did evaluate how transit could be served in the future. In terms of rail, we found that the best place for rail to be for service to stations and things like that would be on the outside of the I-75 roadway and instead of in the center. So that's why we're utilizing the center to provide those lanes there to preserve the outside of the right-of-way for should the event rail come in the future. But we are consistent with the vision plan for T-BARTA in terms of accommodating express buses, especially in the express lanes.
Okay, so the right-of-way is still along the I-75 corridor, but on the outside, you're retaining that? Because I'm thinking of, getting right-of-way anywhere else later on.
Yeah, we're showing what we call a border width, which is what's identified along the interstate. That border width is still preserved on the outside in that we're not changing the outside lane and widening it to the outside, with the exception of a few places where we have some access connections to express lanes. But that outside is being preserved, and in general, we're holding the existing edge of pavement where it is.
Thank you. Thank you.
Commissioner Servia.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. My question is about noise walls. So I heard you say where feasible, noise walls will be included. Noise is one of the biggest problems that we hear about as county commissioners. And so I'm asking, as I see Clark in the audience from Manatee County, and you guys to please collaborate, because where you're not doing noise walls and where we have the future, designated for residential development, we have got to take some action to make sure we get those mitigative barriers up, because otherwise we just have hundreds of unhappy people.
I can respond to that very quickly in terms of noise. We did a detailed noise evaluation in both sections, identified the land developments and land uses that are adjacent to and the levels. So when we talk about feasible and reasonable walls, we've looked at what's there today. Our noise data report also identifies where we'll say the line is in terms of noise levels being at a certain level, and we'll coordinate those with your agencies to make sure that land development, if they do encroach into those areas, that they were very aware that noise will be a concern or an issue. Noise will be reevaluated as the project goes to the next step in design level. So as more development occurs, we certainly update our noise report.
Thank you. And the noise reports will grow over the years as traffic numbers increase, right? I'm guessing. Or are you planning it for the worst case?
We've projected to 2045.
Okay. All right. So then, again, what I would hope is that our county can locally add something to the comp plan to kind of recognize those areas where noise is going to be a problem over the next decades if we don't install some sort of barrier. Thank you.
You're good. All right, we're good. Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Thank you. Just a comment. I saw on your visuals that you neglected to show 2 additional interchanges on 75 that are part of Sarasota County. And I think it's important that we keep them in mind, although we don't have a lot of FDOT projects going on. We have Sumter Boulevard and Toledo Blade. Both of those interchanges are part of Sarasota County. And I think it's important that we don't overlook them, because there is incredible development and industrial development happening now on those interchanges. We've started seeing a real uptick in bad accidents around the Toledo Blade interchange. And just coming up here today, I saw an accident at the bottom of the exit ramp off Sumter Boulevard. So I just request, so that we don't overlook them, that we show on any visual those 2 exits, since they're part of Sarasota County.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Thank you.
So, Vice Mayor, the study that is presented is in our sister district, encroaching into Manatee County a little bit. The interchanges that you're talking about are part of the study that District 1 is doing, which is our interstate master plan study that we're doing. We'll be coming in the near future to present what's coming out of that particular study, and both interchanges that you talked about and the potential new one that we're looking at Raintree will also be covered in our presentation.
Yes, Tanya will
Yes,
be back
thank you
in
for
May,
that.
May for that full presentation for both the central and north portions of the study that LK had mentioned. So
Right.
we will hear about that in May.
Right, thank you.
All right, thank you. We're going to move forward at this point. Item 2, update on current Sarasota, Bradenton, and Palmetto projects.
And for this, we're going to have Richard O.J. Ojavolk, who has 40 years' experience and over 35 years of experience in District 1. His experience ranges from planning level studies to final design in all realms of civil engineering. And here we go.
Morning, everybody. Actually, this is a great time for me to be here and make this presentation. It really is related more towards safety from a global aspect and a lot of things that LK had brought up earlier and a lot of things that were presented by Chris from Bennett as far as your safety action plan. I'm just waiting here until the board comes up or the presentation comes up. There we go. And I got my clicker. I think I'm good. Again, my name is Richard Ojavolk, and everybody calls me OJ. Way too many vowels in my last name, and I grew up just west or east of here in Sebring. So you take whatever nickname you're given when you're, 8 years old, and OJ happened to be the one that stuck. But I work with the Department of Transportation. Just like Tanya had said, about 35 out of 40 years. 5 years I spent out in rural Nevada just to see differences in transportation, but in a place where it's about half the size of Florida and there's only 900,000 people, it's interesting to see that a lot of the problems are about the same. Vision Zero was a concern there where their annual deaths were only 360 people versus 5,800, which is a little bit out of proportion considering that the population of Florida is only 7 times that of Nevada in total. And when I said 300 plus crashes in Nevada, that was the entire state, including Las Vegas, which we don't consider part of Nevada. We consider that just Las Vegas. But anyways, to get on with the presentation, it's an update on specific projects before we get going. And I did 2 safety moments, but also one of the biggest crash zones you can see is right turns and left turns. When you come in, you're looking left, you're turning right, or you're turning left and you're looking right, and you're never looking where you're going. But please, make sure before you make that turn or you make that movement that there's nobody in that crosswalk or fixing the cross. Because I also did a lot of fatality investigations in northern Nevada, and some of the worst crashes were slow speed, right turn and left turns where you roll over a person and quite literally break every bone in their body as you roll over. I don't mean to be graphic, but I've seen a lot of, just as bad 10-mile-an-hour crashes that hurt somebody and killed somebody as I did 100 to 150 miles an hour. With that, again, these are just 10 grouping of projects, 8 projects that are all kind of interrelated and they're all going on at the same time in Manatee. I know that it mentioned Sarasota. We've got a lot of good stuff going on in Sarasota, but I wanted to focus in this area. And kind of like I said, timing's great. You guys are working on approving your safety vision plan. We're going to take a lot of those, and we've been taking a lot of those concepts and working them into a lot of these projects. 10th Street Complete Streets, which actually started 10 years ago with the 3rd time we looked at crossing the Manatee River. Palmetto Network Trails, which is designed to provide interconnectivity to a bunch of different civic and public recreation areas in northeast Palmetto. Bradenton Palmetto Connector, which is our 5th and is going to be our final attempt to get a recommendations for crossing and modifications to get additional flows over the Manatee River between Palmetto and Bradenton and along I-75. The DeSoto Bridge, I brought this one up because that one's going to coattail pretty much the initial stages of the Bradenton Palmetto Connector and the fact that we have to replace the DeSoto Bridge here in the next 4 years or so. Another one that we actually are working with right now with the MPO, and it really was born about by the large amount of work that y'all's MPO has been doing with transit and mobility as far as in the area, and we got to thank Dave Hutchinson and the rest of the staff, is that we decided that, as part of incorporating safety and working better, just like District 7 is working with us on the interstate, is to build off of the transit study and the concept of operations that they're developing for US 41, and to do a quarter mobility and safety study for that. We actually, the emphasis is on safety, but when you switch the acronym around, it's like SMAC or something like that. So we didn't want to really go with that when we stuck with congestion, mobility, and safety study. And again, the project that they're working on right now with Benesh is the concept of operations, where we want to be able to look at these low, medium, and high levels of participation of transit. And then resurfacing, which is part of our normal operation. I threw that one in there because we're also making safety modifications to that. And again, that's going to be our primary goal: safety, mobility, and efficiency, basically, for the area. But that doesn't mean that you can, like I said, living in Sebring in the 70s, we used to be able to make it from Sebring all the way to the beach in an hour and 15 minutes. And we would be, popping a beer and setting up. Now it takes an hour and 15 minutes just to hit I-75, and it takes an hour and 15 minutes, if not longer, to get onto the beach. So there's been changes in expectations and travel times. And we have to manage mobility. We have to use, just like I've heard earlier, autonomous vehicles, more technology. We need to be able to squeeze the maximum amount of efficiency that we can out of our transportation with the minimal amounts of right-of-way and other major investments, just because, again, we have finite dollars. And if you've seen in this last couple of years, it's challenging more and more as far as the costs and everything else to implement. And then finally, added on to this is the quarter vision plan for Cortez. That's going to go basically from the DeSoto Mall out to Cortez Fishing Village. And I think the main impetus of that is that with the completion of 44th, as you head out to the interstate and you've gone across the tributaries to the Manatee River with a new crossing just on those, you're going to see a major change in travel and transportation patterns within the area. So with that, I'm going to go ahead. This is a summary, basically, of where all these projects are located. The purple is the Palmetto Networks Trail area. The big blue is all the area we're looking at for Braden and Palmetto Connector. The pink is the DeSoto Bridge. The green is 10th Street, complete streets. The yellow and the red is basically the 41, the ConOps, and our study in order to be able to support the MPO with all their great efforts as far as bringing high priority transit to the areas. I guess you could say gold or amber going out to the beach. Again, that's that vision study and the interconnection between those transit and then that eastward extension of 44th as you go towards the interstate. And then the green is the stretch of US 41 where we're going to start transforming that into a safer quarter. That was an old design done in the 80s when it was asphalt was cheap and prevalent and wider was easier with no medians, and we've discovered those are very unsafe sections of road as far as pedestrians, bicyclists, and present high probabilities for crashes. So we're going through and installing medians. We're widening the outside lane in anticipation of either emergency vehicle and bus transit prioritization within that area. Whoops, I'm going the wrong way. So just again, here's some quick scenarios. 10th Street, which is we're going into design. We completed the PD&E. It's basically set up to connect the northern portions of Palmetto. There's a large of manufactured housing towards the northern end, make it more walkable, more safer as far as coming from north to south to come down into Palmetto proper. The Palmetto Network Trails is designed to provide connections within that neighborhood. It is designed to connect the transit hub just north of 17th Street to Martin Luther King Park, to Lincoln Park Middle School, also to revitalize the Lincoln Tunnel, connecting it to Lincoln Park, which is going through some upgrades right now, and then also to provide a contiguous trail on the eastern side of US 41 up to the proposed Washington Park. And again, this is all about mobility, safety, and choices that we're starting to want to provide to the locals. Get into the more, this one is, and I'm sure you guys seen this in different packaging, this is the Bradenton Palmetto connector. I've worked on it 4 times, or 3 times. All right. It started in the 80s and didn't meet a very successful run. We've continued into 2000. We've got Gail Woods from Trans Systems, where this time we know we've got a successful recipe as far as a good team, and we're working forward on 8 corridors that were left over from the previous study that we are actually have added 3 to because of actually 44th Street and some other stuff that has gone on, and a suggestion by a local gentleman, Mr. Goss, that basically made us rethink our eastern boundary to include I-75 again. But this study is just now kicking off. Part of the reason why I'm kind of going over all these studies is that we've got a lot of work going on in the area, and between Gail and then Ms. Sermons, who I'll introduce here in a second, who's working on the other study, please contact the DOT if you have questions. We're happy to give one-on-one presentations. We're going to be doing an extensive amount of public outreach and involvement for this project and the other projects in the area. We've been doing a lot of extensive outreach on numerous other projects, but we just want to make sure everybody has the facts. That these are all safety geared and safety focused improvement or projects that we're looking at trying to bring forth in cooperation with the MPO and the local governments, and also being able to budget and fund these things out over a 20-year period. Because a lot of these things, like I said, a $80 million investment for transit priority or something along a corridor, if it's spread out and phased correctly, can probably be more implementable than doing one big standalone project. And that's, again, what we're working with the MPO for the 41 transit corridor. The DeSoto Bridge PDD is going to be kicking off in this coming up fall, and it's going to be working off of recommendations from the Bradenton Palmetto connector as far as laneage, and that'll be a direct input into it. And so that's why you're going to see more of Gail, and that you can not only share your opinions or disconcerts or positives with me, but you can also with Gail, who's been, like I said, tasked with running the project with the department. Sarasota, Manatee, the US 41 CMAS, like I said, anyway, we arranged the acronyms with safety up front, either came out SMAC or SCAR or something like that, so we didn't want to do that. But it is a safety-focused presentation. LK had alluded to earlier is that context, land use, just like Commissioner Servia had mentioned, is that it is more interplayed in the design of roads. We tend to blame the drivers. We tend to blame, lack of, behavior. But we're beginning to find out, too, a lot of it goes with the design of the roads. Little signals that slow people down. I come over from Bartow, and to avoid the 30162, I go down Swenson, I forget the name, but it's a little back 2-lane road, and it comes out of light just south of there. And there's guardrail and 12-foot deep ditches on both sides, and the road's about 20 foot wide. I go pretty slow on that road, as opposed to 62, which has got 200 feet of right-of-way and wide shoulders where it's designed to go 60. Well, that smaller road is, I think it's signed at 30, but you really want to go about 25 on it. And we're not talking about that radical of design, but we are talking about bringing in curbing and landscaping and stuff that we have to work with as far as with the local governments, as far as shared joint use agreements as far as maintenance and all the other stuff. Green paint for bicycle lanes. It's inordinately expensive. It's great, but it's inordinately expensive. So, we have to start sharing these burdens and costs. The Sarasota Manatee, the congestion management and safety study, again, it's a direct coattail off of a lot of the work that the MPO's been doing on the corridor. And what we want to try to do is bring together the support elements to support their efforts on both street transit, but also making sure that it's safety, and that as that corridor continues, it's very limited. You're not going to see expansion along US 41. The cost of that is fairly devastating in major terms of adding lanes and stuff like that. It's more of a localized corridor. Sarasota County went through their master plan in the 1990s, early 2000s, That's coming into a roundabout corridor for that area, so it's kind of changing the nature of it. And we want to be able to do the same thing using the Manatee County, the comprehensive plan, the safety elements, also the City of Bradenton's comprehensive plan, and the goals and objectives in there. So we want to make it as safe, walkable, multimodal, and be able to integrate those neighborhoods and be able to make whatever changes we need to in order to mitigate cut-through traffic and everything else that are offshoots of trying to manage congestion and also looking at the higher level of technology. And that's Miss Amy Sermons, who she's from VHB, and she's going to be leading that study for the district. And like I said, between Ms. Wood and Ms. Sermons and my team, which is several other people online, Matt Dawkins from RK&K, two consultant project managers, other consultant project managers from the DOT, is that you're going to see an extreme amount of outreach and trying to coordinate all these efforts under one unified thing so that all of these kind of complement each other. And that's some of the things that LK has been trying to get us to do. It is an extremely, it's hard. It's kind of like wrangling cats. And, you know, you can crack the whip, but cats kind of go off in all directions. The ConUp study, again, I don't need to say very much on this one. That's the one that the MPOs embarking on. We're working, you know, we're kind of like working behind them, seeing where they want to do their demonstration projects, what support we can do for that, but also in transforming that entire corridor into a transit-oriented development corridor or a safer corridor that helps manage the congestion and everything else. We're going to be making recommendations to follow that. The right-of-way, if there's stations needed, stuff like that, we want to be able to support through a notice of understanding or agreement between the department and the locals so that we can help promote this and get the ridership up, you know, to the best extent practical, where we can start looking at FTA SIG grants and stuff like that to supplement the lack of money that the department has as far as in those areas. Finally, again, this is just one illustrative project, again, where we're safety. This is a stretch of US 41 in front of the airport. It's a 7-lane section of road that was built in the late 80s, early 90s when there's more lanes were better. We're beginning to rethink that, too much asphalt. We're doing a resurfacing job where we're introducing access management, and we're also trying to promote expansion of the sidewalks as great as possible. We know USF's down there. We know New College is down there. We're trying to make sure that we, you know, as we go through these just repaving jobs, we're trying to get as much value added as we can in terms of safety by promoting more and more, you know, options that we can do for transportation. Again, this is one that just came up, and it was a request of the MPO, I believe, and the locals, is that, like I said, with 44th Street crossing the tributaries to the Manatee River, you're going to see a profound change, I believe, a lot of changes as far as traffic circulation and all that. And so with DeSoto Mall and that whole stretch, we're looking at doing a safety combination for walkability, again, transit, mobility, but to a degree of an urban core, which is what this is beginning to start shape up as far as Manatee and the city of Bradenton. And again, this is the 44th. I pulled this off y'all's county's website. We're going to try to take advantage and see what things we can do as far as using that to complement improvements that we can make. Just like with the corridor visioning study, there's a lot of growth potential out on the 301 corridor because it is still one of our control of access corridors that promotes higher speeds but larger developments for warehousing and stuff like that. We think that with 44th, you can capitalize that on possibly redirecting a lot of that traffic safer to the interstates. And then with that, I'm going to stop because I've been blabbing too much. But I just wanted to, again, we wanted to get and show you all these projects. And these, by far, are not all of the projects. We've got resurfacing on 64 that we're looking at working on our adaptive traffic control system with the county staff. As far as Manatee County, we're doing the same things. We're going to try to do the same things on the rest of these. It's just we're trying to bring them all together to make sure we're using all of our resources and all the rest of the resources as cost effectively as possible to solve basically overall mobility and congestion problems that we're going to be dealing with. We're not going to build our way out of it. With that, I'm going to stop. I'm tired.
Commissioners, any questions, comments, or before we move on? Commissioner Servia.
Yes, thank you very much. Excellent presentation, OJ. I really enjoyed that. I learned a lot. I do have a question about the resurfacing project on US 41. That does include a road diet, right? We're eliminating.
We've shifted that into, we're making the outside lanes to accommodate a future road diet, but we wanted to work with the MPO to make sure that we may extend those limits in order to see how it works with their concept of operations. So we slowed that down so that we could be on pace with them so that it would be better synergy as far as getting projects out that are going to benefit both sides of the fence. But it is including that. It's moving towards that. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and the green paint for bicycle lanes, please, please. I know it's expensive, but I think that will help us to reach Destination Zero faster. I have a question about the safety improvements on 41, because I know of a couple of businesses that were in a situation that they didn't want a sidewalk, or they couldn't give up their parking spaces to accommodate that. And what happens then? I mean, I think what happens is the DOT just moves on and says, okay, well, we're not going to fight with you. Is that what happens? Or is there
That's
a
not what's
taking
going to
of
happen.
them?
There's going to be a lot more public engagement. We want to go out to these people. We want to talk, and we want to see if there's things we can do to mitigate it. And stuff like that. We just went through a much smaller project like this in downtown Punta Gorda for US 41 northbound, and we found, a lot of successes there. There's a church that had some issues. We sat down with them. We worked them out. So that's what we want to see more of on this board.
Yeah, I hope that we could come close to working them all out, because getting back to the safety component and a very dangerous corridor, it all does kind of fit together. So I know it's difficult. As I look at 44th Avenue East and such a major roadway now that is going to run all across our county, has there been any thought to establishing or reserving land for a park and ride, since this is a direct connection to the beach? I mean, I don't know.
It's a county road, so I can't answer those.
Okay.
I think that would come under us, Misty.
Well, it could, or it could come under the DOT as part of a transit operation. So just throwing that out there that, that's the future. We have to get cars off the road and more people in bigger cars, right?
No, we can work with the MPO, talk with that when we're working on our Bradenton Palmetto connector.
Right,
I mean, I was
okay.
just deflecting because it is a county road.
I understand. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to butt in here for a second. I just want to mention something that Commissioner Servia talked about, and that's how when there's an issue with a business on one of the roads that DOT is working on, I can tell you from experience, from my standpoint, I will tell you that DOT goes beyond, over and above what they need to try and satisfy the businesses. I had it happen, and, I mean, I don't know if you remember Secretary Nandum, but you guys were fantastic. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I may.
Yes, please.
So, Commissioner, if we have the situation that you mentioned, which is with the parking and the conflict with the parking, right? We have the ability to go through the eminent domain process and get the property that we need. But these are the instances where we need partnership with the local agencies like the county here, where you could look at adjusting their setback requirements and all that stuff, which actually creates a space that's needed to put in the sidewalk, right? So if we all work together, we can actually take care of the business impact, like what Madam Chair was talking about, and then we can make projects happen.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Any other comments before we move on? All right. Thank you so much. Good presentation.
Oh, thank you. Y'all have a great week.
Thank you. All right. Next, the MPO annual report. Top 10 accomplishment. All right.
Morning, Board. Slade Downs, planner for the MPO. I believe we have a short presentation for you guys. Let me get that up. Great. All right, thank you. So 2021 was quite a year for the MPO. As you know, the MPO is a collaborating agency, and we would not have been able to achieve a lot of the accomplishments on this list without the leadership of the people in this room, and especially their municipal staff. So this is not just a list of our accomplishments, it's also the accomplishments of your engineers, planners, consultants, assistants, clerks, and of course your accomplishments as well. So with that, I'll go ahead and begin. We received 11 transportation systems management and operations project applications in 2021 as a result of the continued work from the TSMO advisory group. As part of Destination Zero, we created the Destination Zero leadership team made up of elected officials. This group met for the first time back in October and had a very productive discussion about how to bring Destination Zero policies to our local jurisdictions. In 2021, we successfully held 33 public committee meetings and 5 board meetings, along with countless other workshops, outreach events, working groups, and other official meetings. And we introduced 2 new advisory groups to further our LRTP goals and objectives, the Transportation Resiliency Advisory Group, and also known as TRAG, and the Destination Zero Advisory Group. Last year, we funded 5 new LRTP studies, including the Resiliency and Vulnerability Assessment Study, the US 41 Concept of Operation Study, the 2 area trails studies, and the Destination Zero Action Plan. And I promise I will not bring up Destination Zero again. As a result of the Barrier Island traffic study, the MPO was able to get some of the island traffic improvement projects funded and begin transitioning the Barrier Island Traffic Committee into an advisory group with a wider focus on resiliency throughout the region. Additionally, the MPO was able to further its LRTP priorities in 2021 in many ways, namely the adoption of the US 41 Transit Choices Study, the funding of several key projects to improve the region's network as outcomes of that study. And back in July, we underwent our quadrennial federal certification process with the Federal Highway Administration and the Federal Transit Administration. The MPO received 4 noteworthy practices for public engagement, LRTP performance measures, a new performance measures dashboard, and the Transportation Improvement Program. As part of the certification process, we hosted an open house at the MPO office. And I just wanted to give a quick thanks to all of our public, private, and nonprofit partners who came to sing our praises in front of the feds. And the Tuesday Traffic Jam webcast was started to creatively bridge the public involvement gap caused by COVID. Tuesday Traffic Jam included several special episodes on Destination Zero and a special mini-series called Talking Transit. The webcast was a huge success and won national recognition at the Transportation Research Board's national meeting, where it received the runner-up in the 15th annual John and Jane Q Public Outreach Award. And finally, the MPO hosted a mobile bike workshop in downtown Sarasota as part of the Gulf Coast Safe Streets Summit and FDOT's Mobility Week. And just as I said at the beginning, many of these were done as a collaboration between us and all of our municipal partners. So thank you for making 2021 a good year for the MPO. With that, I'll be happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Not seeing any. Thank you so much.
Okay. And
next, the strategic priorities.
Yes. So in your packets, you'll have received a one sheet on our 2022 strategic priorities. You know, went over all of the great things that happened last year, and we just wanted to keep you informed about what we plan on doing in the next 10 or so months for the rest of this calendar year. Thank you.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay, any questions?
Thank you.
All right, I need a motion to affirm the 2021 Top 10 Accomplishments and 2022 Strategic Priorities.
Second.
We have a motion by Mayor Brown and a second by Barbara. Yes, Barbara Langdon. Thank you so much, Commissioner, from the City of Northport. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It's approved, ma'am, unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, member comments. I'm scared to look. Anyone want to make a comment? Commissioner Servia.
Yeah, just one comment, and it's a place where I can talk with Commissioner Van Ostenbridge, which is that I've received, so I know you've probably received 10 times as many emails about 75th and Manatee, and being a timing of the lights problem, perhaps, is what the citizens who believe they're traffic engineers tell us. So I don't know if DOT has looked at that. I'm sure Commissioner Van Ostenbridge is probably talking with those folks, but I just wanted to bring that up. There seems to be a log jam of people going to the beach, and the intersection is not moving in lots of directions.
Is that near District 4?
Yeah, it's it's a pretty common problem that we have just about every weekend. If you can do something about, you know, the high quality of life here and the beautiful weather and the location of the beach, I can help you with it. But I'm not sure that we can build enough capacity to eliminate traffic congestion on weekends headed to the island. But I do get those emails, and I just say, you know, try to be patient, choose when you drive, you know, try to be selective about your route. But if you think on a whim you're going to, at noon, drive out to the island on a Saturday on a sunny day, that's probably poor planning. So.
Right, I just mention it because signal timing keeps coming up in the emails that I'm receiving, and I don't know if that is the solution or not.
I hear that as well, but to be honest, I mean, even when the light turns green, sometimes I live right by Manatee and 75th Street, so sometimes the light turns green, there's nowhere to go, right? The car in front of you is still, because people have turned left and backed it up, people have turned right and backed it up, and so there's just nowhere to go. The road bottlenecks, maybe I would say half a mile or less, maybe Judy, less than half a mile from Manatee and 75th. It goes from 4 lanes down to 2. And so sometimes it's just gridlock until you clear that bottleneck, and then it'll creep. It doesn't, you're not going speed limit, but at least you start moving again once you get past the bottleneck. And then 4-laning it all the way to the island, you're going to bottleneck again when you get to the island. So I don't know that at some point it has to go to 2 lanes because that's the capacity out there. So at some point you're going to have the bottleneck, and at some point, traffic is going to start to back up as you head out there. It's just sort of the way it is. I don't know that, maybe the mayor can chime in, but I don't know that changing the timing of that light is really going to make a difference because, like I said, oftentimes it turns green. There's nowhere to go.
I'm going to butt in here before I go to the mayor. That is something, Commissioner Servia, that perhaps you should check with traffic management with at the county. They can probably answer that question for you. Mayor Titsworth, did you have anything?
Yes, what we're noticing, it's gorgeous outside, so everybody's here. So one of the problems is it's not just weekends. It's not just people going out to play at the beach. It's happening during the week, and it's stopping the workers, it's stopping the deliveries, it's stopping everything because everything is stuck on the other side of 75th Street. And it's true, Kevin. I don't know if a light's going to work because, they had that don't block the box for a while. People can't move. The other thing, the causeway causes a slowdown because of all the rubber dunkers looking at the horses and everything else. Sometimes when you get just past that causeway area, things start freeing up and moving again. So yes, I'm not sure what the answer is. There's just really too many cars on the road. And I do have a couple updates if you want to change the subject a little bit. We did decide with the Destination Zero goals and everything we're working for. We have had some fatalities, pedestrian fatalities, golf cart, almost fatality. It was a horrible crash. Distracted drivers, everything else. The painted bike lanes, I would love to find the funding to paint our bike lanes because I'm getting so many complaints from the speed bikers that are in that bike lane that the cars they're tired of sitting at a standstill, so they'll go around into the bike lane to pass somebody who's turning left. And there's been near hits, there's been hits, and everybody stands still, so you can't even get police there to quickly enough to try to assess it, because it's happening throughout. I wish we had the right-of-way space to move the bike lanes off into designated trails, but we're hoping that's going to be able to happen at Golf Drive when we do that. Look, but painting of bike lanes, and I think part of the expense is you got to paint it again, and then again. So yes, I'd like to look at that as well. But we did implement 25 miles an hour. We still had 3 sections, small sections that were still 35 miles an hour, and Anna Maria is all 25. So with the statistics, as if you're a pedestrian crossing the street, you have a much larger chance of survival if a car is going 25 than if a car is going 35 or above. We decided it might be time. So we talked about it at commission meetings. When we looked at it 8 years ago, people were there with pitchforks. The place was packed full of residents upset. This time, there was 3. And they get it. We can't move anymore, so it doesn't matter what the sign says. But if there's cases where you can, we're going to try to keep them all at 25. But the chief's going to be good about giving people a long chance to learn it. We're not going to go out there and start ticketing everybody, but I think it's time we look at that seriously and see if it can help. I think that's all I've got right now.
All right, any other comments from anyone? All right, not seeing anything, the meeting's adjourned. Oh, wait a minute. Yes,
Well,
Dave.
I had a question. I heard about a water
I
taxi.
was so close.
Never mind. But water taxi in the future, because I understand there's some move afoot with the county and the cities in Manatee County, and there's been consideration in the past in the city of Sarasota and Longboat Key about water taxis. So that'll be something that I think other people would like to hear about at a future meeting. Thank you.
I was going to save that for the workshop tomorrow. All right, without further ado, this meeting is adjourned.